If you don't learn to read, think about everything you can't do.
We're talking about life or death.
An emergency 5-alarm fire across all areas.
At universities all around the country, professors are reporting a problem. Students can't read books.
See, I think there are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. An educated, healthy, and confident nation is harder to govern.
In my previous video, I spoke about SEL, aka Social Emotional Learning, better defined as slowly eroding literacy. Reading is a vital part of education. Inability to read impacts on all other parts of learning. I recall my early years of having difficulty learning to read. I was considered a slow reader, having to make out words, sometimes losing thought and comprehension. Attributing to my below average grades, to put it kindly, kind of like the old saying, the harder I worked, the behinder I got, is what I felt. Not until I was married and attending evening college did I really start to read, teaching myself how to speed read in order to keep up. My college grades were the total opposite of my first 12 years of school, something like 3.8 give or take, but I made the choice to make that change. I reiterate, I made the choice, not sitting back, blaming, and saying, poor me. Improving my reading, improving my understanding, improving my comprehension, ultimately improving my grades. I am curious about how many adults have passed through our public schools whose literacy level was reduced due to inadequate teaching techniques for reading. How many children today are losing out because of reading problems caused by inefficient teaching methods during their formative years? I'd like to take a moment and reiterate what I said in part 1 about public schools. What I am offering here are excerpts from some good videos and good reports I found to enlighten you. To fully understand and appreciate the impactful messages of each of these, please click on the links below. You'll be glad you did. Listen to the next clip. Reporter Andy Pierrioti of the Atlanta News First conducted an exceptional investigation into public school deficiencies in properly teaching reading. His full 43-minute report is an absolute must-see. I will be referring to his report several times throughout this video.
We are crippling our young learners by not teaching them how to read.
Hi, I'm investigative reporter Andy Pierrioti. Georgia lawmakers banned controversial teaching methods this year used to help children learn to read for decades, following multiple Atlanta News First investigations. The legislation also overhauls how future teachers are trained in reading instruction. It's intended to address this statewide crisis. By fourth grade, only 1 in 3 Georgia students can read proficiently, according to a state assessment. Tonight, we reveal potential causes to the problem and why parents and experts are now calling for a reading reset in how children are taught.
Did you catch what he said about only 1 in 3 children being able to read proficiently? That equates to 33%. What about the 66% that cannot read proficiently? By being less proficient in reading, are they at risk of lacking understanding and comprehending what is being taught? Will their self-worth falter? Will their anxiety increase? Will they be more susceptible to peer pressure? Will they be more likely to be suicidal? What is your state's requirements? Have you ever looked into it? Do you know? How many kindergartners and first graders are being taught in your community? Were you a casualty of bad teaching skills for reading? Yet universities like ASU, mentioned in my previous video, are more interested in what children feel, especially in an impressionable age, focusing on social emotional learning, slowly eroding literacy, as I prefer to call it. Emotional learning is not the job of schools. Public schools have imposed themselves on families. ultimately creating a wedge in many cases between parents and their children. Dr. Thomas Sowell warned us as far back as 1993 that schools were focusing more on emotion and feeling rather than literacy and academics. Mainstream media has done little of nothing to expose the harm to the public. My question is why? Reading, writing, and arithmetic has been the staple of education for many decades, almost centuries, with reading as the forerunner to build on. As we look closer, you will recognize the inefficiencies in reading is nothing new. It is not a coincidence that literacy has been eroded. It's just one ingredient for the main course. Our youth are being served up and sacrificed right before our eyes. Fools refuse to recognize. In fact, some even argue on behalf of programs that reduce literacy. And who is paying the price? Here's another clip commenting about students entering college.
At universities all around the country, professors are reporting a problem. Students can't read books. This is true even at elite colleges and universities. In one required class at Columbia, students are often expected to read about a book a week. But in the past couple of years, students have started telling their professors that they can't do it. One student told her professor that she had never been required to read an entire book. This is part of a larger trend. People aren't reading anymore. This is true for men and women, people who went to college and people who didn't. So what's going on? Well, it turns out that there are many pieces to this puzzle, but it all begins with how we teach kids to read.
In his report, Andy addresses the 3 cueing system for teaching reading, which is actually banned in many states. For those states that have not banned 3 cueing, how are their preschool and first graders levels of reading? How many parents in different states are unaware of the harm of the 3 cue system and the actions taken in other states to ban it? Was the 3 cueing system a diabolical ingredient added to the main course, so to speak, to reduce literacy? Reduce literacy, mold impressionable minds early, and you have generations that can be sculpted into near zombie-like creatures wandering around aimlessly, programmed on what to think, not how to think. Easy to control, easy to manipulate, blindly accepting irrational and emotional inspiration, susceptible to mass manipulation and mob behavior, even violent mob behavior. Think about who would benefit from that. If you don't know who I'm talking about, please go back to parts 1 and 2 of my public education videos and they will explain. Listen a bit more about 3Q methodology.
What's the cheapest pet you got?
It seemed to be getting worse. And what frustrated her mother the most, the school called her daughter a success story and suggested passing her on to the next grade.
I felt like they felt I should be celebratory, like, oh my gosh, thank you. But I just didn't see any progress. She still couldn't read. So now all the alarms are going off and I'm expressing my frustration with how are we passing her, but she can't read.
A-V.
This is Matthew Purcell. He was in the same reading program as Sophia.
Whenever I do my best.
A few months into it, his mother, Missy, noticed something strange. She says while Matthew was reading at home, she saw him guessing words using pictures on the page, not sounding the words out.
3rd grade, level D.
Missy is a former school teacher herself.
Most of the time when he was reading, he was looking at the words and then the pictures, words, pictures, words, pictures. So he was reading pictures. He was being cued by the pictures.
What Missy is talking about is a reading method called 3 cueing. It's a theory where kids are encouraged to only sample the letters and the words in the text, relying mostly on prediction and context for comprehension. Henry May is a professor at the University of Delaware. Reading Recovery asked him to conduct the largest study of its program ever, tracking thousands. At least 19 states have banned it so far.
Notice all the states that have banned the 3Q system for teaching reading in their schools. What is shocking to me is a correlation between literacy and incarceration. I remember during my 20 plus years at the prison that many of the inmates incarcerated for the first time were required to take GED classes before they qualified for any inmate labor positions in the kitchen, maintenance, training programs, etc. Education back in the 1980s and 1990s was a big part of prison reform. Now I can better appreciate the importance of the emphasis on teaching reading and GED to those inmates. Have you ever noticed people, especially adults, who finally get their GED are proud and feel a sense of accomplishment? Some more excited getting a GED than college graduates getting an MBA. They accomplished something they felt incapable of doing. Think about that. Check out this next clip from Andy's report on incarceration rate for those who cannot read.
The potential impact to Georgia, the highest incarceration rates in the nation.
What they were saying.
A report published by the U.S. Department of Justice 30 years ago echoes Kayla's struggle in the classroom, shedding light on the link between poor reading proficiency and incarceration, revealing that reading failure is most likely a cause, not just a correlate for delinquent behavior. Adding, on average, incarcerated juvenile offenders are severely crippled readers. Judd Smith is the Barrow County Sheriff.
It's plug and play. It is 100% a link that if you do not have literacy and you don't have an education, you are walking down a path of recidivism, criminal activity, and then at that point, you're taken from society.
According to the Prison Policy Initiative, Georgia locks up 968 per 100,000 people. That's not only the highest in the U.S., the state incarcerates more people than any free democratic country on earth.
Would you say, other than mental health, that low literacy is maybe the second most contributing factor of whether you're going to be in a jail or not in your lifetime?
I think that's very safe to say, and I think that all the data shows that.
Notice what the sheriff said about the importance of reading. Learning to read early and read well opens the doors to opportunity. Of course, there are those who cannot read who intimidate the better students because they feel the brainiacs are making them look bad. We used to call that the inferiority complex. I don't know if you can say that today. One thing I learned with inmates is they like to save face in front of their peers. They will act out in a group, but with no audience, for the most part, would be more receptive to discussing rationally. Prison is a microcosm of society, just amplified. Students who act out may be helped in one-on-one situations to get them on the right path, pointing out to them that help is a strength, not a weakness. Then integrate them back into the group. So by teaching reading properly in kindergarten and first grade, it sets the mold for future learning. Instead of imposing emphasis on feeling and emotion, focusing on fewer students per teacher, strong emphasis on learning to read, programs to help young impressionable minds to get on the right path, building their confidence, reducing their anxiety that comes from not being able to read, along with working directly with parents in those early years, can do more than any prison reform can possibly do. Reading can be correlated to mental health issues, ability to communicate, and a whole lot more. The best prison reform for our young men and women is not to go to prison in the first place. That does not mean pat them on the back and say, "We will give you another chance, you poor child." That didn't work 50 years ago, and it's not going to work now. All that does is set them up for failure, more depression, more anger, more serious behavior. What does need to happen is to make sure children are given a good education that gives them a chance to survive in this world, to give parents support they need, and most importantly, to make sure God is introduced into their young lives. Otherwise, they will be led to the slaughter, sacrificed, and destroyed. We get what we got coming. Choices have consequences. The right choices get results. Bad choices, well, look where we are today. Kind of speaks for itself. Let's take a look at the next video about the inadequacies of college in preparing teachers to teach.
So, why are literacy rates so poor in Georgia? The DOJ report places blame on colleges and universities for not adequately preparing future teachers, concluding that most teachers have little or no knowledge of phonetics or intensive systematic phonics programs. In other words, not enough focus on instruction that includes sounding out words. The tragic side effect, the report wrote, is that reading teachers inadvertently victimize their students with less effective, if not ineffective, reading instruction.
It hurts my heart. The word victimize seems like such a strong word, but it's true. It's true.
Shannon Hammond is executive director of Adult Literacy Bureau. She spent decades as a Georgia elementary school teacher and administrator.
We are crippling our young learners by not teaching them how to read.
Universities have been called institutions of higher learning for decades, but are they really institutions of higher learning or institutions of indoctrination? Imagine if engineers were taught emotion and feeling. Would you fly in an airplane that they had a feeling could fly because it looks good? Or would you prefer one that they know can fly because it's aerodynamically correct with proper lift, propulsion, structural integrity, has been tested and proven capable and reliable? Would you want to have surgery from a doctor who felt the procedure would work because, I kind of feel good about it? Or would you prefer the surgeon who specializes in your medical need, stays current with the latest methods and technology, and has years of experience performing the surgery you're about to receive? Are teachers properly trained and educated to teach children to read, especially preschoolers and first graders? Are they properly trained in phonics and the application of phonics, etc.? Are they properly educated on how to address slow learners, autistic children, those with attention deficit disorder, etc.? A house built on stone will survive the storms to come. A house built on sand will fall. If early education is weak like sand, what emotional, psychological, and physiological harm is ahead for them? Teachers need to be fully equipped before standing before impressionable minds.
Right now, Georgia schools are implementing a new state-mandated reading curriculum aimed at improving literacy. But education advocates say teachers need more help. We found one school district setting a possible example.
I'm also going to grab my water. I go into classrooms all of the time.
Katie Gaudette sprints to her next classroom.
I leave my water in every grade level.
Always on the move, working with teachers.
Are there any kids who you need to highlight who have a low accuracy rate?
And students.
Let's look at the word street.
At A.L. Burris Elementary School in Marietta, with one goal in mind: improving literacy.
You can see the impact and short turnaround time on one school that took action to do the right thing. Imagine all schools across the nation taking the same step forward. Where does your city, county, and state rank? What education are young future Americans receiving? Ask the questions, do your research, open your eyes and ears to the truth. As I mentioned in the beginning, be sure to click on the links below. Education is a key to our nation's survival. Remember, there is one individual who is cunning, deceptive, decisive, deceiving, lying, and hateful of mankind. He has many tools, many ingredients, many ways to manipulate fools, to foster hate, to create chaos, and make mankind his puppet, to rob souls from God. Proverbs 13:16 says, "In everything a prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool flaunts his folly." Remember, we get what we got coming. Revelations 14:7 says, "Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of judgment has come." Please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button, ring the bell. Comments are more than welcome. It's okay to rationally and respectfully disagree. However, rude, hateful, obnoxious, visceral, caustic, vulgar, irrational comments will not be tolerated and will be deleted. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.